sure Putin was quite disappointed after the May 9th meeting with Xi because there were no big deals. The Chinese are reluctant to invest big time in Russia. And it's interesting why. Either they think the market is overpriced or it's too risky in terms of what is the stability of Putin's own regime, or they decide that they can get what they need without major investment. There's no major investment of China in Russia.
What do you think Trump is up to? And do you think Trump actually knows how to deal with Putin? Because Putin is a past master at manipulating people and working international leaders around the way he goes. And, everything comes, but Trump's approach, everything seems to come back to trade. And you mentioned trade at the beginning. But I think one of the positives I got out of Trump's statement on Truth Social last night was he talked about trade when this catastrophic bloodbath is over. And if Putin gets his way, it's not going to be over for a long, long time. What are your thoughts on how Trump is coming in, and what do you think is going to happen next?
You're absolutely right that Trump is underestimating who he is dealing with, and he's dealing with the operative in the Kremlin. He's dealing with somebody who is skilled in reflexive control, in designing a special set of traps that would lead to an opponent actually delivering results that Putin wants at expense of American national interest. And they believe that it's possible. And the Soviet and Russian tradition of that kind of warfare is very strong. So what is striking to me is how much Trump is either in denial or there is some personal interest of these underlying strategic objectives that Putin operates on. And Trump makes everything personal, as if his personal relations with Putin can change that calculus that we have described before. This is where the difficulty is. And this is where Trump is incapable of exactly achieving to what I think he genuinely wishes, the stop of the bloodbath. It is not by catering to Putin's plan that he will stop the bloodbath. And it's very painful, especially for Ukrainian people, to watch this fundamental misunderstanding of Russia by Donald Trump and a fundamental underestimating of Ukraine. I mean, his recent comment that Russians didn't take Kiev because their tanks were bogged in mud.
In the mud, I know.
I think it's just ridiculous. Okay, that kind of emotions aside, I think Trump indeed wants to stop the war. He wants to show, as he said in his inauguration speech, that he is a peacemaker. All right. So where has he achieved peace so far? Nowhere, neither in the Middle East. We have India-Pakistan new war. We have Ukraine-Russia war continues. And I think there's another motivation that pushes him to this kind of Russian embrace, and that is the economic logic. Trump has been convinced that there are big money to be made. That's why in caps lock we've seen trade. After the phone call with Putin, he thinks that war stands on the way of making big money between Russia and Trump organization, possibly, not necessarily United States. And that is luring. That is luring opportunity. And the last one is, of course, China. Again, it's a Russian smart manipulation that they are saying that decoupling with China would be very useful for United States. It's misconception, mainly because the contribution of Russia to Chinese growth and power is minuscule.
Yeah, it is. But I'm keep asking myself, what is China getting for its support in Russia, and is it getting control of Russian natural resources in the same way that China has taken over natural resources across Africa? As by way of payment for the Chinese investment in critical national infrastructure and roads and telecommunications and all the rest of it. as it expands its Belt and Road Initiative. What price is Russia going to have to pay for Chinese tacit support and physical support at some stage in the future? And will Russia be able to pay that bill?
Well, I'm sure Putin was quite disappointed after the May 9th meeting with Xi because there were no big deals. The Chinese are reluctant to invest big time in Russia. And it's interesting why. Either they think the market is overpriced or it's too risky in terms of what is the stability of Putin's own regime, or they decide that they can get what they need without major investment. There's no major investment of China in Russia. And what China is getting mainly is Russia is an instrument of weakening United States and Europe. The Russia's invasion of Ukraine created contingency that neither United States nor Europe wanted to deal with. It focuses at least the attention of Europe now on how to contain Russian invasion, and that also that fundamentally opens China more open field in Asia Pacific, and also China is learning a lot about the future of war. Russians are providing Chinese a lot of intelligence on how Western weapons are performing. They're also testing a lot of drones that can later be used in other wars. So they get very valuable insights into new technological warfare.
Oh, there's no doubt that every side is, and every country around the world is using one side or the other to beta test a lot of its new military technology and bits and pieces. But exploring that Chinese-Russian relationship, do you think there's a danger that if Putin gets defeated, there's a danger that the Russian Federation could collapse and China would see that as an opportunity to get some historical territories back, or other interests to try and provide stability? Or am I speculating too far here?
It's a bold question, which I wish more people asked themselves. It's something that we should be thinking as a possible scenario. What is the impact of this war, this invasion on Russia itself? And I think that one way to put at it is that it's really losing a lot of people in the war. Its economic model is constrained, and right now it only basically is fueled by defense and military production. So influx of money to pay people, work 3-4 shifts at defense companies, and then all these compensations to dead and wounded soldiers in Ukraine. I think that China historically has a land dispute with Russia, with back Russian Empire. Chinese are eager to get access to water resources of Altai part, and I think Russians, in a way, have a theory. In order to hold their empire together internally, they want to export entropy, which is chaos, abroad. And this is what they did with this war. Unfortunately, they didn't expect that these sanctions we talked about and Ukrainian resistance will bring back that entropy into Russia itself. And there are a lot of subterranean, signs that as resource pie shrinks, elites at the national level and subnational level, these republics, they're thinking hard how to preserve themselves. So this war is putting pressure. How this will play out is too early to say, and it will depend on the outcome of the war. Like you said, it will be one of the major factors about the future of Russia itself.
Do you think the Trump team might be realizing that, and what they're trying to do is balance off finding a solution without causing the collapse of the Russian Federation? Because actually, if the Russian Federation collapsed, that would make the breakup of Yugoslavia seem like a Sunday school party or something, compared with the impact that it would have on the global stage. It might actually trigger us into a global conflict, especially if you get republics that have suddenly got control of old Russian nuclear weapons and nuclear capability.
Well, there is a big spectrum between weakening and collapse. And, when we are talking about collapse, there has to be a lot of factors in place for this to lead to this scenario. At this point, we are nowhere near there. And if this is the logic that is driven, then it's actually a Russian information operation to scare both Western Europe and United States into even thinking about defeating Russia. We often hear that somebody even worse than Putin could come, that you'd rather deal with this type of, KGB kleptocracy type of regime than with right-wing nationalist militants. So yes, they are abusing this narrative, accusing the West for their home audience that they want to actually partition Russia, or they want Russia to collapse in order to rally people around the flag. But again, we on the spectrum of achieving this probably still in the beginning journey of it.
So do you see any similarities between Putin's tactics? You've described it quite well. He's a former intelligence officer. He thinks and operates like a former Soviet intelligence officer. He manipulates other global leaders in the same way that a former Soviet intelligence officer would do. But are you seeing any similarities between his tactics in Ukraine and what he's done elsewhere with different Russian incursions, conflicts, attempts to take over countries and regions in the past? And are there any real lessons that we can pull out of that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there are certain patterns, and we've looked last year at Moldova, for example. I've did the research on trying to understand how countries can withstand foreign interference, which we call resilience barometer. And it was interesting that the kind of, based on expert polling, most people when they looked at Moldova, that was so much under Russian pressure, saw that Moldova is getting more resilient. And why? It's because they understand now the pattern of behavior, looking at Ukraine, looking at what they did in Belarus, looking what they did in Georgia most recently. And, in a simple terms, it's easy. They basically try to co-opt elites, either through big payments, or some of them are ideologically aligned. They try to hijack all the reform agenda, especially related to European Union integration. They finance right-wing, anti-European, anti-reform movements. They pour in cash into elections, into those groups, and they do everything in the information space to tear societies apart. We as societies, and it's applicable to the UK, it's applicable to France. We can only exist in democracies if we can reach some common ground between each other. And this is what Russia does. It attacks the capacity to reach the common ground through social media, through, special narratives that they put people head to head. And they make governance impossible. So we cannot deploy resources that we do have to defend ourselves.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like to be amongst the first to get exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership at the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs, or read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.